There's a metaphor towards the end of Paul Thomas Anderson's latest movie, One Battle After Another, that's both really unsubtle and sums up the entirety of the movie itself. Now, this tactic isn't new to Anderson movies. They often climax in a moment of pretty blatant symbolism. Who can forget Daniel Plainview exploding on poor dumb Eli Sunday at the end of There Will Be Blood, like one of Plainview's oil wells, sprung from the rising tension throughout the picture that preceded that moment. Or even more blatant, Dirk Diggler's giant fake dork at the end of Boogie Nights. Talk about a metaphor. Fun side note, 20 years ago, I attended a Boogie Nights screening in Reseda, located in the same place I filmed the opening scene of the movie, and at the post-movie reception, Dirk's fake penis was on display in a glass case. Living in Los Angeles definitely had its perks. The metaphor in question from PTA's latest film is pretty simple. The entire movie is basically Leo DiCaprio's character, Bob Ferguson, trying to keep his daughter safe when his violent revolutionary past comes back to haunt him. The climax sees a dramatic three-car chase filmed over the rolling highway hills of Borrego Springs in Southern California, filmed and edited like one of those first-person roller coaster videos, but in a way you could see maybe Alfred Hitchcock employing back in the day. Bob's daughter, Willa, is on the run from a bad guy with a shotgun, hired by a cabal of rich white Heritage Foundation / Project 2025 type guys to kill her because, well, she's a mixed race kid. We'll get to those details kind of in a bit. So she's jamming down the highway in a stolen white sports car, being chased by the hitman in a fancy blue sports car, who in turn is being chased by Bob in a beat up old hoopty struggling to keep running. He's frantically trying to protect his kid. The metaphor here is pretty obvious. It's every parent's worst nightmare, the terrifying reality of preparing a child for the day they enter an increasingly harsh real world. More specifically, the threat every girl dad has to contend with once their daughter reaches the precipice of adulthood. Racist bad guy with a shotgun is the real world. Bob can't catch up with him, so it's up to Willa to save herself. Now, the parent-child dynamic is one PTA has explored many times before. Thematically in his first theatrical release, Hard 8, and then again in Boogie Nights and The Master, and literally in There Will Be Blood, which is a heartbreaking tale of an oil-soaked relationship between a father and a son. One Battle represents a complete 180 for Anderson in that respect. At its core, it's a warm girl dad movie that, and I hate diving too much into the personal life of a director, had me thinking, oh, he's got daughters and he's making this for them. It turns out he does. One of them actually is kind of close in age to my daughter, who's 10. It feels like a movie made by a dad worried about sending his daughters into the real world. And the world that PTA presents here is a very real one. One Battle After Another is very much set in Trump's America, where every headline is dominated by ICE raids, civil rights being trampled on, the threat of a literal police state. That's the backdrop here, and it's the least subtle aspect of the movie. It's less a statement about anything and just the setting. It's where we live now. It's factual, and it's much scarier than if the film were set in like an abandoned forest cabin or a spooky insane asylum. This is the world our kids are growing up in, and there's little we can do to protect them from what feels like an increasingly Kafkaesque America. To illustrate this point, there's a great scene where Willa's friends are being interrogated one by one by a military police colonel played by James Ratterman, who's trying to get Willa's phone number so she can be tracked. There's nothing overtly villainous about the interrogation. In fact, the terror is in how real it feels, especially when you realize they don't bother with legal requirements like having parents notified or present during the interrogation, but it's the exact type of thing you realize probably happens all the time. It's only when the threat of being handcuffed and detained that the trans kid gives up Willa's phone number. What's most surprising about One Battle is just how simple it is. This is PTA's least complex movie since probably Boogie Nights. His movies post There Will Be Blood have all been pretty dense in one way or another, from a character perspective like in Phantom Thread, or from a purely plot perspective like with Inherent Vice, which honestly, if you don't watch that movie at least 2 times, is nearly incomprehensible. I watched Inherent Vice a few days ago, kind of preparing myself in case One Battle was similarly complicated, and ended up being shocked at how simple this latest movie is by comparison. It's kind of his most popcorn-friendly movie, if that makes sense. It has a cartoonish villain in Sean Penn's Colonel Lockjaw, which honestly will probably get Penn a bunch of awards because his transformation is wild and immediately iconic. He plays an army colonel on the verge of joining an exclusive club of rich, well-connected, incredibly racist white guys called the Christmas Adventurers. It's the kind of thing you could see, I don't know, Brett Kavanaugh being a part of. Anyways, I won't spoil the main plot point here because that is kind of spoiler territory, but Lockjaw needs to get rid of Leo's kid for reasons and has no problem using the literal US Army to do so under the pretense of immigration raids. His performance is that perfect mix of terrifying and darkly comedic. In fact, if there's anything PTA has perfected in this movie, it's his ability to mix laugh-out-loud comedy with absolute terror and tension. One scene that stands out in this respect is when Leo's character is trying to get the rendezvous point to see his daughter and can't remember one of the many passwords required to get that info from the stubborn far-left Antifa-type phone operator on the other end, largely because at this point in his life, like many of us at a certain age, are too burnt out on drugs and booze to remember. That sounded bad. I'm not burnt out on drugs and booze. But a lot of us are burnt out. Especially these days when we all have passwords and two-factor authentication and CAPTCHAs for even the most mundane online services. It hit very close to home and had me belly laughing in the theater. There are even a few physical, like Three Stooges type gags that are hilarious and bizarrely not out of place as well. Not that this needs pointing out, but the cast is, as always with PTA movies, outstanding. Leo DiCaprio's run of iconic roles he's been on for like 15 years now continues here. Wouldn't shock me if he became Anderson's Daniel Day-Lewis replacement, the way he sort of becomes Scorsese's De Niro replacement. Chase Infinity plays Leo's daughter and somehow still manages to shine on screen with Leo or Sean Penn, which is kind of crazy given the level of performance they're putting in. One thing that kind of stands out also, given how gorgeous PTA movies usually are, especially There Will Be Blood, which I think won Oscar for cinematography, and The Master, which looks like a moving Norman Rockwell painting, is kind of how mundane the cinematography is here. Not to say it's bad at all, it's just the whole movie has a run and gun kind of style to it, almost feels like documentary-ish, which is super fitting given the nature of the material. It's actually pretty refreshing given how some directors seem to only grow more interested in style and form over substance as they get older. And no, I'm definitely not talking about Wes Anderson. The score is another collaboration with Radiohead's Johnny Greenwood, and as always, is just so good. It's so good, and if the licensed soundtrack is filled with bangers as well, if this was the 90s, I'd buy both CD compilations. Also, shout out to Sacramento, my city, for being the location for a good chunk of this movie. It's fun to see scenes like right down the street from the Crest Theater where I got married at. Several times I was like, hey, I parked in that parking garage before. So in case you need a simplified version of whether it's good or not, I mean, of course it is. Paul Thomas Anderson's floor for making movies these days is basically masterpiece. But that doesn't necessarily mean you'll enjoy it, if that makes sense. I watched Phantom Thread, and even though I know it's like a really great film, I don't remember shit from it, and I can't be bothered to watch it again. Licorice Pizza similarly had its moments, and like I know it's a great film, but it didn't really stick with me. For me personally, this is easily my favorite work of his since The Master, which I loved and rewatched a bunch of times. It is long. I think it's around 2.5 hours, maybe a little bit longer, but it never really feels long. It moves along at a really urgent pace, and Leo, Sean Penn, Teyana Taylor, and the rest of the cast are never not captivating when on screen. Oh, Benicio del Toro is also awesome in it. It's also not the kind of movie that needs to be seen in theaters. If you prefer the whole method of breaking long films up in your living room, it'll probably be streaming in a few months or weeks or whatever the hell Hollywood does these days. For my money, PTA movies are always special events, so I'll always go check them out in the theaters. But if you're more inclined to watch movies at home, this would be fine in your living room down the line. And if you're a girl dad like I am, you might want to watch it in the privacy of your own home because, like, there might be tears that happen. I won't confirm that happened to me, but I also won't deny it. Anyways, that's my review for One Battle After Another. Do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, tell your friends, do whatever, hug your kids. It's harsh reality out there.